which I just did, and said, welcome everyone to this Quality Matters online learning webinar where we partner with special guests to talk about various topics, and it is titled Beyond a Checklist, Authentic Learner Interactivity and Assessment in the Age of AI. And joining Quality Matters is Harmonize, Virginia Community Colleges, and Tidewater Community College. So before we begin, we jump to the next slide. Just talk a little bit about Quality Matters. So at least one of the organizations we're talking about here, and you'll learn more about the others as we go. Quality Matters, global organization for quality improvement in online and digital teaching and learning. We started back in 2003 by faculty and institutions who are seeking to determine quality standards in online design. We started actually as a FIPSI higher ed grant, and then bootstrapped into a standalone 501c3 profit, and our community that has over 90,000 individual members wide, as you can see. If my a little choppy, I'm going to switch over to another speaker and talk a little bit about that.
That sounds
Quality
better.
Matters is centered around collaboration, collegiality, and continuous improvement and research. Next slide, please. So as you can see, Quality Matters is sometimes called the international gold standard for online quality. We have over 1,300 member institutions in 50 states, and as well as over in the 50 U.S. states and over 30 countries internationally. We've certified over 15,000 courses and have over 3,500 QM certified reviewers. Options for Quality Matters has options for individuals, schools, publishers, organizations, and businesses. Quality Matters offers to elevate and scale quality in online design and teaching, and we support online instructors with results-focused professional development. And at the end of the day, it's really about helping ensure online learners receive a quality online experience. And we offer, next slide, Quality Matters offers rubrics, resources, and research to elevate and ensure quality for all online learners. So that's a little bit about Quality Matters. And I will now turn it over to our other speakers and let them go. Marcus, who is the CEO and founder of Harmonize Learning, I'll let you take it away.
Right. Well, given he threw to me, I guess I'll introduce myself first, even though I put myself last. I'm probably the least important one here because I'm not working for a university. I just help people like Sheri and Heather do their jobs. Real quick about Harmonize Learning, we generate tools that make it easier for your students to interact with each other. Think better discussions, better assignments. We're launching peer review tools in about 3 weeks, PDF annotations, those types of things. And so I spend a lot of time speaking with instructors because instructors are trying to deal with the fact that here we are in this AI world. So that's the expertise I'm going to bring, is sort of sharing a lot of the different gathered strategies and such that we've worked with instructors to help develop. With that, I'll throw it over to Sheri to introduce herself and her context, and then over to Heather.
Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're coming in from. So I'm Sheri Prupis. I'm Director of Teaching and Learning with Technology at the Virginia Community College System, which is 23 colleges across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And this interests me because I want to know how AI both enhances and disrupts the faculty-student relationship. And I also want to ask that same question of how AI enhances and disrupts assessment. I sent the introduction now over to my colleague Heather from Tidewater.
I was all prepared. I was unmiked and then I muted myself by accident. So sorry about that. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Heather Brown. I am with Tidewater Community College, one of the colleges in the Virginia Community College System. I am an instructional designer and I work in our Center for Teaching Excellence. And currently, I also am a co-leader for EDUCAUSE's AI community group. And in that role, I follow AI pretty constantly. It can be overwhelming. But in doing so, I can help. We have a great community, and I follow a lot of the questions that faculty and actually everyone across an institution has. So, which is a lot of changes happening constantly. And so I'm just here to bring a little insight into this presentation on that.
Cool. And Heather, I didn't think about it, but I should have grabbed that URL for that community group from you if you want to
Oh,
go
yeah, I can do that, definitely.
throw it out in the chat, because it is a quite active group, and it's got a lot of sort of like, oh my God, this just happened. Oh my God, this just happened. Oh my God, this just happened going on all the
Yes, I
time.
will put that in the chat for everyone.
All right, so note on logistics before we dive in. We're basically, so as Sheri mentioned when we were leading in, like we had a really interesting conversation, or 7 or 8 hours worth of really interesting conversation. It felt like compact into a short amount of time to prep for this. And so we're going to kind of lead in with a conversation, sort of a distilled version of that, to sort of kind of catch the essence of what we were doing. But you're welcome to put questions in the chat. You're welcome to put questions in the Q&A. Jim and Quality Matters is recording this, and so they will be able to share that out after the fact as well. Highly encourage your questions, and or if you just have stuff to share in the chat, share it, because sometimes the webinars, the most interesting thing happens in the chat. I'd like to think that we're going to say interesting things, but maybe someone's going to blow your mind in the chat with the resource that they're sharing. So feel free to do that. There's 665 people in this webinar, so the chat may get a little rowdy. So feel free to put in the question 2 or 3 times if we don't see it, but if you really want it answered or want us to consider bringing it up, put it into the Q&A pod, because it's going to be easier for us to see things there as we go through. And so to sort of frame the conversation, and then I can turn this over to Sheri, because she had the main lead in on this. The main topic we're going on here is that how does assessment, well, first off, how does learner interaction happen? You know, quality matters standards and all the things that we strive for. How are those impacted by AI, and how does that impact assessments? Because all of this is sort of tearing apart our world, but not necessarily tearing apart our world in a bad way. Although I might get crucified for saying that, it's making us focus on a lot of things that are important. So, so Sheri, do you want to lead us off, and then we'll just start going from there?
Yes, so there's 2 statements that I want to start with. The one is that I really believe that learning is social. Yes, somebody could go to a website, somebody could pick up a book and learn facts, but real learning happens in negotiation with other students and a faculty member by really having interaction. And when we think back to our own college days, and we think about what courses we liked the best, it's rarely that we said, I had this course with the greatest textbook. We're much more likely to say, I had this professor who did X, Y, and Z, or approached this in a certain way. So that learning is social, and I think the relationship between faculty and students, also student and student, I think is really vital to the learning process. But we know that our faculty are concerned and complaining about AI and how it fits in with assessments. So what I want to say about that as a lead-in for it is I really believe that assessments have not worked for a very, very long time. That we have to, and what AI has done is AI has pointed out that we have really focused on what has a student memorize, not what have they learned, not do they know how to apply, not do they know how to think differently, because they have been introduced to this material and to the conversations and to the integration of the conversation and the material. And so AI is pointing out to us something that we've really known for a long time, that our assessments may not actually be measuring learning, And so what do we do about it? How does it change things? And that's why I started in my introduction by saying the question that what we want to ask is double-edged. How does AI enhance and how does AI disrupt the relationships in learning, faculty and student and student and student? And the same thing with assessments. How does it enhance, make assessments better? And how does it disrupt it? And the disruption, as Marcus said, is not necessarily a bad thing. It gives us an opportunity to rethink, reimagine, and go back and ask ourselves what learning is. And that's why we've got on this slide the QM standards, because the QM standards are about good teaching and learning, specifically in an online environment, which is where some of the struggle is taking place, but it takes place in a face-to-face environment as well. Um, but the standards are standards about teaching and learning, and we have to make sure that we are still doing that kind of teaching and learning. And how do we make AI a partner in it? Ignoring AI is not the way to go. We really want to use AI. We want it to be a disruptor, and we want to change what we're doing and how we're doing it. Okay, I'm going to hand this over to Heather for a minute or two.
We're out of sequence. We're out of sequence. No, so right. We had to do a big pivot when COVID hit, right? Everything went online. And then that was a major disruptor. And then it's taken us a while to kind of get our feet back on the ground. And then along comes generative AI at the end of 2022, right? 2023, we are freaking out in the education world. Slowly but surely started realizing students were using it and using it to do mainly their writing assignments. And what were we going to do about it, right? And so and then in that same time frame is when the AI community group at EDUCAUSE started. So I was really honing in on focusing on LinkedIn and different social media platforms of what people were doing out there. And it's been a whirlwind of educators trying to educate their colleagues, and everyone's just trying to figure out what the best way to work with or without AI, especially when it comes to assessment. So there's been a lot of across LinkedIn, mainly, well, for me, is there are different ways that faculty are using Gen AI in their courses. A lot of faculty are not using Gen AI in their coursework, but it's out there. It's ubiquitous. People are using it. Students are using it all the time. And we just, it's hard to tell them, don't use it for this. You can use it for that. You can only use it for this piece of this assessment or activity. And it's not the same with everybody. Some faculty use it, some faculty don't. Other institutions have guidelines, some institutions don't. And so the students are confused. They don't know how to use it. So they're using it. They're going to be using it for, all the other reasons that people and that students misuse tools is to, I hate the word, but cheat, right? So I know everyone is kind of wary of that with Gen AI. And so this has really kind of prompted us to look at what are we doing to assess our students, and now trying to figure out, we need assessments because of this tool. We need assessments that are more real world focused, that have meaning behind them, so that students are engaged in the actual content and they can see the relevance of the end product. what they're working towards, and that what it's going to be like when they get out, how they're going to use Gen AI in their specific domain. And I want to give you some statistics real quick. There's a study, and globally, 86% of students now use AI in their studies, and 54% use it on a weekly basis. And for the United States, this adoption rate reaches even higher proportions to 92% among higher education students, with 51% reporting that AI has helped them achieve better grades, and 56% stating it has made them more efficient. Another statistic is in 2023, like I would really say when Gen AI was really out there, only 22% of faculty members regularly used it. But this is encouraging, but by now, by 2024, the end of 2024, it has skyrocketed to 84% in higher educational professionals using it. So you can see that we're getting there, but a lot of faculty still have not dipped their toes into trying to figure out how to collaborate with Gen AI and how to utilize Gen AI in their assessments. And there's some literature out there, like the two-lane approach Danny Liu from the University of Sydney has put out there. Leon Frouzet, believe he is from the United Kingdom. I could be wrong. Sorry about that. But he has the AI assessment scale, and I have these resources for you, and I can put them in there. But it helps you frame how to work with AI in your courses and at an institutional level.
And
Okay, I'm going to grab back the mic.
yeah, I was gonna say, let me throw back to the people. You mentioned quality standard 5, so Sheri, I wonder if, or maybe Jim can sum that up real quick to that we're back on your social learning side, and or if you want to go in a different direction, that's fine too.
No,
But
it's okay. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I can just quickly jump in. I mean, so Quality Matters has eight general standards to look at it, the design, quality design of a course. And so the learner activities and learner interactions, making sure that they are substantive and that they provide opportunities for interactions to support active learning. That's really what's found in Standard 5. When it comes to looking at the design of a course. So this is really where you're looking at all the interactions, either learner interactions, or learner and instructor interactions. So just sort of tying that back to where
Yeah.
Quality Matters is thinking about the
Okay.
standards and design.
Exactly, talking about the faculty-student relationship in an asynchronous course. Where does that interaction happen? And it happens in a couple places, but one of the important places that it happens is in assessment feedback. So the student is, if the assessment is proper, is revealing themselves in their responses to the assessment, and in the feedback, the faculty is revealing themselves and they're working on that relationship. But if a faculty member is using AI to provide the feedback, then where is the faculty member? And that's the lawsuit that was talked about so much at the beginning of last week, where the student saw that the teacher had put in an AI feedback and the faculty member had a piece of the prompt in it. That's how the student really knew that it was AI. And the issues in that particular case, it may have been dropped, but the case itself is still important because the student was complaining about a couple of things, but one of their main things was, how can a faculty member tell students that they can't use AI, and yet the faculty member is using AI? Like, where's the equity in that? Yet we do want to make sure that we don't have a sci-fi movie where there's AI teaching AIs and no humans are involved in the process. So I think we have failed in a couple places. And one of the things I think we have failed is in working actually in our professional development with our faculty. I think in the very beginning, we worked hard to explain what an LLM was and how AI worked, but we really stopped at the AI is a better, more efficient Google search engine that you could talk to in regular English. And by stopping there, faculty did not present good opportunities to their students, and students were using it in the same way. But the assessment asked a question, the student put that question as a prompt into AI, and they got a response to it. So we really need to work with faculty on how to make AI a partner in teaching and learning for both faculty and students. So one of the examples that I saw about 2 weeks ago that I thought was really good was one where instead of asking some questions, it was a political science course, instead of asking some questions about the current US administration and the executive orders and the things that were being said, and how do you compare and contrast this to other administrations? The assignment was actually telling the student to ask AI to act as Abraham Lincoln, and then ask the AI, then debate with the AI, debate with Abraham Lincoln about what would they think of the current administration, habeas corpus and other things. How is that similar than different than what happened in the time during and immediately after the Civil War? And then ask students to reflect upon that. And now all of a sudden, you're using AI in a very different way. And now, could students continue to cheat? Yes, but if you've engaged them, they're going to want to tell you what their own reflection is. And so I think we have to really move away from almost the monkey keystrokes of AI, that this is, ask this question, you get this answer, but really, how can we use AI to be a partner in for us and with us, for faculty and for students as well? And with institutional guidelines, the question becomes, can a faculty member take a student, even if they take the student private information out, and put student information into AI and ask that AI to provide feedback? What happen, who owns that student information, and what happens when it goes into the AI, even in a protected environment? So many of us are in environments where institution is in a protected Google or a protected Microsoft Copilot environment. But when you enter that information to AI, it does not go away. So what are the institutional guidelines for how we use AI as a faculty member? And then how do we really improve teaching and learning by making AI a very robust tool? And I say a partner, but I don't mean a human partner. I mean, understanding its flaws and its benefits, and making it a real partner.
Yeah, and a lot of I speak to hundreds of instructors. I don't know how many, so enough to make my eyes bleed sometimes, but there's a lot of frustration out there because the instructors are on the front lines, right? I don't know how many folks in this session are instructors, but you're out there. You may know your institution guidelines. Your institution may have guidelines. You may not have the training you need, and how do you fight that fight? And how do you slowly, I guess with empathy, I put the empathy up on the slide here, and we'll get into some examples of this, and we'll talk through some strategy of this as we go. But like to Sheri's point of all learning is social, and we need to make it a critical thinking partner. But you as the instructor are teaching 3 classes, and there's 15 assessments in a class. You now have 45 assessments, and semester is about to start. And what do you do? And how do we as leaders help those instructors be able to fight that fight with proper training and proper guidelines and such. And I think that's something that we'll pivot into here shortly to be able to dive into that to some degree. But I think it's important for us to think of ourselves as partners to those instructors, because I hear so much like, I am so sick of reading and grading AI written content. It's a waste of my time. Why are the students doing this? And how do I get around it? And then I similarly, like Sheri was mentioning, the student frustration on the other side, like I spent all this time in the assignment, the instructor piped it into AI and gave me AI feedback. Why am I paying for this? And as we shift more, like a lot of the current pressure is we need to be training humans to be workers, which we can agree or disagree on the purpose of higher ed to that degree. But given that all these students are going to transition out into an AI world, and we are expecting them to be able to qualify for actual jobs and to do actual jobs, how do we also integrate that into what we're doing? So
And I just wanted to make one quick point on face-to-face teaching and learning. The company that makes Blue Books is having a resurgence because in face-to-face classes, they're having students write essays in class in Blue Books, no computers. Yet, what kind of essay, what kind of critical thinking, what kind of research can you do when you're writing in an hour or an hour and a half as opposed to over several days? So how do we change our assessments, and what do we think about essays, and what are the purpose of essays? And let's distill down what those purposes of essays are, and how can we still meet the purpose that we need other than just the writing part.
so I haven't been keeping up with the Q&A, but I'm going to frame what we're about to roll into a little bit. There's some strategies you can use in your assessments, and Sheri was just highlighting essays and what's the point of an essay, and also is essay the right way to assess and to get students to actually learn things, and are we misusing essays often because we're trying to get those to be the center of student demonstration of knowledge and student learning, but that's not really social, and how do we kind of meld all these together? And the strategies that we teach instructors a lot fall into two categories. AI is really good at writing text currently, and it can generate some images and such. But if we can do things in the assessment that are more multimodal, following universal design for learning principles, currently, anyway, it's harder for AI to be able to handle those for us without involving the student more in the critical thinking process of what are they trying to generate. So one of the big things we're going to talk about is doing multimodal assessments. So getting away from written essay, because I could go write an essay in 30 seconds with ChatGPT. May not be a great one, but it is an essay. And how do we then transition into, maybe I saw some people in communications classes, you're doing PowerPoint presentations, you're doing mind maps, you're doing things that are not just written essay. But then that also transitions into the instructor only has so much time, and they by and large are underpaid. And so how do we then make it easier for the instructor to manage this? And that is really where we lean into the social side of learning, peer review, peer critique, student to student interaction around these items, so that we are getting students to interact around non-written content as well. Those are some of the strategies we're going to go through here shortly. I want to take just a moment to read through the Q&A, unless Heather or Sheri have seen. Is there something we're looking at? 2 seconds. Someone asked about discipline specificness, and what I'm going to go through shortly is a way to actually use AI to help with your discipline and your specific subject area, being able to embrace some of the things that we were talking about as well. And then Sheri, there's a question for you about your Trump versus Lincoln thing. That if you want to maybe answer that in chat, or if you think it's more pertinent, we can jump in as well. All right, so everybody ready for us to roll into some actual assessment strategies? Any parting thoughts, Heather and Sheri? All right. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to segue into strategies that you can use, and they are going to be, to start with, more generic categories of strategies. And I'm going to leave you with some resources when we go through. We've developed these working with our instructors to be able to help them transition. When you're doing multimodal assessment, the reason I'm here is Harmonize Learning. The way Sheri, what tools do you use, Sheri, for social learning at VCCS? I don't remember the exact list.
We use Harmonize, of course. We also use Packback. Others,
Are
I'm
you-
not sure offhand.
you
Those
guys
are
Yellow
two.
dig? Do we do yellow dig?
Not as much.
Okay, and feedback fruits is another one that pops to mind.
Oh, feedback fruits,
the
yes.
Okay, so I wanted to just get this out there that but as I dive into these
Hypothesis.
strategies, for those that are out in the field, the LMSs are not great at student-student interaction. That's me being polite. That's why I'm here, because we build third-party tools to help this. Consider looking at third-party tools. It doesn't have to be Harmonize. It can be something else, because if you ask your instructors to do some of these strategies in the LMS, the technology is not great in the LMSs to handle some of these. So you're going to have to be careful with what you recommend your instructors to do unless you use one of these third-party tools to help. And there are a fair number of them out there. But the idea is, how do we get away from just purely written student-to-student text interaction? Okay, I'm going to drop this out into the chat towards the end, but I'm going to give you two things and I'll talk through some of the ideas of them. Anytime we were looking at making things AI resilient, we want to get entirely away from, am I catching the student? Am I punishing the student? Am I stopping the student from doing a certain thing? Because instructors don't need to be police. So what learning practices, like good learning science, can we do that encourages the student to have a better experience? Be that because it's interactivity, be it's because it's a better form of assessment. Let's not do something for the sake of catching them doing AI. Let's do things that are actually better assessment practices. And we've broken those down into some categories in this blog article. Let me throw this blog article out into the chat as well. I'm going to talk through a few of these, but then we've actually built an AI bot to help you take your assessment and be able to help brainstorm some ideas around these trends, around some of these, because a lot of times when instructors are faced with, here's my assessment, like I said, I have 45 of them, how do I get there? A lot of these, there's a table of contents along the left side of this document that you'll be able to take a look at and jump to and such. A lot of them focus on documenting the learning process. So if you're just asking for an end result essay, say you're in the composition class that you're in there, they can generate that with AI. What if we actually had them write on a piece of paper some mind map or some notes and take a picture of that and put it up of like, here's where I'm going with it. Or let's have them actually do an outline, or let's have them do a first draft, or let's have them actually screen share their essay and talk about the parts where they're struggling. How can we get them to actually share how the writing process went to be able to do this? And so it doesn't have to be writing, but anytime you're documenting the steps they went along in the process, that makes the students go through the steps that they should go through in the learning process, which is a little harder for AI to compete in. So not AI proof, but what we call it is AI resilient as well. And then as we march down through those, it can be things like, well, I mentioned screen sharing that essay. Right now, if the student is screen sharing an essay and speaking about their difficulties, that's really hard for AI to do. Hey, this was an awkward sentence. Hey, I didn't transition properly from my thesis statement to this. Or, hey, I was struggling tying Trump's policies to Lincoln's policies and how they implemented them because I kept getting caught up into really politically biased articles when I was doing these things, or whatever kind of sharing experience about the learning they can do is good. Doing that in a non-written way is also really good. Sheri and Heather, I was just going to run this list. I didn't really talk about this. Do you want to chime in on any of these, or if you see something, just like wave your hands and jump
Yeah,
in?
I'll just chime in.
Okay. So these kind of march down through this line of like, make it in ways that are good for learning. For example, if we're having them read a document, use something like Perusal, Hypothesis, or Harmonize to actually, or Google Docs to have them actually comment on the document. So they are reading the content, consuming the content, interacting with each other, because that actually raises outcomes as opposed to just combating AI. Like there's this ICAP framework from ASU that shows like an 8 to 10% learning outcome increase if you can take a passive reading activity and move it into the active realm. So that's the kind of things we're looking for here, where it's like, what good learning science can we do that's harder for AI to do as they go through? Learning journals, peer review. Anytime you can get your students to shoulder the work for the instructor, it's not the instructor giving up their teaching job. It is the instructor doing an amazing job of getting the students to interact with each other. And so assigning formal peer review. I will acknowledge that all of the peer review tools in the LMSs are terrible. So you may want to go to an external tools. We do this at Harmonize, Peerceptive, Critic, feedback fruits that do these tools, or you can do it informally in a discussion if you want. But getting them to actually interact with each other adds this peer pressure of not just to use AI, but also has them critique each other's processes, has them critique each other's videos, those types of things, so that the instructor doesn't have to shoulder the additional burden of watching 30 reflection videos about the learning process. Instead, the students are doing that for each other. This gets back to Sheri's point that all learning is social. If we can have them have amazing experiences with their peers, that is something they're going to remember, they're going to take away, it's going to make it stick in a better way. I'm going to jump ahead then to this embrace AI one, because this is the one I think that is where we need to get. When I think about leading with empathy with instructors, I have 45 assignments. It's pretty easy to do some of these versus others. Like this, some of these are going to be more work on the instructor. If you have a writing process, you still want the essay, but you ask them to tack on a reflection video of how they actually felt when they were writing the essay. That's pretty easy to tack on. You can still read the essay. If you feel the essay was written by AI, you can actually go watch the video and see what they thought about the writing process. But that enforces reflection on learning, which is great, and reflection on writing process, but it gives you one extra tool in the sort of are the students being authentic check. That one's pretty easy for instructors to add because they're still grading the essay. They don't necessarily have to watch every single video, and that's a good sort of empathetic, like, okay, here's a good nudge in the right direction, versus Sheri's embrace AI requires quite a bit more creativity. So taking that, I was writing an essay about Lincoln versus Trump's suspension of habeas corpus writ, blah, 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 all these things. That takes a lot of brain power, almost an exhausting amount of brain power if you had to do it 45 times. And so how do we actually embrace AI as we're going through? I will say the most important thing when you're doing this and you're embracing AI and you're going into some of these strategies is be super clear with your students what it is that you consider good AI use and not. Heather has been put out a link, I think twice now in the chat, and I was going to share it at the end. Leon, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Furs, has a great assessment scale for some of these resources to where I'll go ahead and put this out. Oh, I can't in presentation mode copy. Heather, can you put out that scale again for them to be able to see?
Yeah, I put it out a little bit ago. I'll put it out right now. There you go.
Okay, so this one is actually a scale produced by him where he actually breaks down what is acceptable use for the different AI levels, and it's a rubric that you can share with your students up front. So if you are leaning into embrace AI, be very clear with your students what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept as you're going through, so that not just so that they know, but so that they're comfortable, because there's so much anxiety over this as they go through things that it's hard to do.
Yeah, it's important to have that discussion with them if you have an AI policy. I know at our institution, we've got 3 statements for the syllabus that faculty must choose from. They can edit it as well. And we encourage our faculty to have a conversation with students in the very beginning, instead of just saying, read the syllabus for my AI statement. We encourage faculty face to face to have the conversation, and then online to record a video to talk to them about their AI policy and why they have that policy in place. And real quickly, at our institution, we actually have an AI literacy module in every single Canvas course instance. So students are exposed to a really great module on AI literacy, which is key. I feel like, if anything, we need to teach students how to use this tool appropriately and ethically. So I'll get off my soapbox there, but.
Yeah, and several people, I'm going to pivot just a little bit before I dive into the AI to help you actually rework some of these assessments. A lot of people have asked about Turnitin and AI detection, and a lot of people on the internet claim that they can detect AI. And I will answer that none of those are foolproof, so you have to be extremely careful. They are useful tools in this era we're in, where we are struggling. So it's like, yes, Turnitin thought it was AI written, not 100% sure. I thought it was AI written, not 100% sure. Have a conversation with the student. A lot of institutions that we work with, so we do Turnitin integration into the discussions and assignments, right? So you can use the Turnitin and AI stuff. But a lot of institutions are really having to spend a lot of time talking to instructors about, here's how to use this tool, because it is not 100%. And so please proceed with caution. And a lot of them are backing away from this because it's too hard to teach instructors across the scale of everybody that like, here's the nuance of a tool told you it was AI written, but do not trust technology. And I, as a tech leader, am here to tell you, do not trust technology 100%. You're a human, talk to the human and be careful with it. So by and large, I tell people not to mess with the plagiarism detection because it puts you in a policing mode. It creates a sense of distrust in the class. That's my personal opinion. If you are good at nuance, use the tool by all means. Recognize that it might highlight something and it's another conversation point for your student. Just do not go punish the student based on the results of that tool and that tool alone, because none of these tools, even you saying like, I think that's AI written, there's been studies showing that no human can actually 100% not know, but most humans cannot 100% detect AI writing. And Heather, you follow this, I think, is that anything else to add on that? You're often on the anti-plagiarism detection soapbox, I think, as well.
Right. No, I mean, there's so many false positives. If you are there are institutions, I mean, even OpenAI created an AI detector, put it out there and then retracted it because they're just like, there's just no way that it can be foolproof. And so, turn it in, like you were saying. There are others, but some institutions don't use it at all. And some, we have it. We have guidelines. We strongly encourage faculty to have the conversation so that it's not just that one piece of information that they're looking at and making a decision, but that they are then having conversations with their students. And that's what's key, right? So it kind of comes back to the standard, the interactions that we have with our students, and building those relationships and why it's important that we teach them how to use it ethically and responsibly. But yeah, so everything that you just said.
Okay. Let's dive into this. So I'm going to go back to this blog article I'm showing you. There's some lead in. All of the strategies are here if you want to read them. We did a webinar on this that you can watch if you're more of a video learner. The key thing I'm going to call your attention to is this link right here, because this link is actually a link to GPT, an AI module. You do have to have a ChatGPT account, but they're free to be able to do this, to use what I'm about to show you. But we put this together based on these strategies to help instructors to say, okay, you're faced with your assessment. What do I do? And so there's a button dead center that's like, ask me questions about my existing assessment, because we really want this to be an interaction around what the instructor is doing. And it will actually go ahead and give them some guidelines of like, what are you teaching? What's the format of your assessment? What's your biggest concern? What are your learning outcomes if you have them? Give us as much information as you can, and we will turn this into an interview process to where, for example, taking Sheri's example of the Lincoln versus Trump presidential policies and debating with AI. I I wasn't actually involved in that assessment, but I made something up of like, I'm teaching a poli-sci class. I'm trying to get students to understand historical context of examining presidential policy making. So I was thinking about comparing Trump and Lincoln, but I currently do that with an essay, and I'm worried about essay writing being the problem. So they can just brain dump what they are dealing with a particular essay into this and save it. And then it's going to pull those strategies that I have on that blog page and going to give them like a quick example of the different ways they could approach this with these given strategies. So this is a great example of using AI to help brainstorm ways for you to do your work more efficiently. There was a lot of discussion in the chat around, is it cheating? Is it more efficient? We're doing it for efficiency. Isn't that why students are doing it? Yes, yes, and yes. So it will go through and it'll take those things like, the writing process I was talking about, or multimodal assignments. This gives them individual examples of what they were doing. And if I scroll to the one on embracing AI, it comes up with something different every time. So I have to read and see if it did something similar to what. So it did. It said, have a simulated conversation with an AI Lincoln, ask him what he thinks about Trump's use of executive orders, then reflect on what this made you reconsider. It give examples on this, and then it will ask you like, which one do you want to dig deeper into? And I can be like let's talk about that. Embrace the AI strategy. And it will then lead through a little more information on some examples for it as well. The stuff we're showing here is a way to help your instructors out, help them be more efficient. But if you haven't used AI for something like this is also a great example of why your students are using AI, because how long would this have taken for me as a critical thinker to go through the strategies and try to come up with examples and to consider each one so that I can brainstorm and try to do what I'm achieving versus just having a conversation to help me decide. what I want to do and go through as well.
Somebody had asked earlier, how is using AI to generate feedback to a student assignment different from using TAs to grade student assignments? And that's the only role that those TAs have. And so it makes me think a lot about what is acceptable behavior from a faculty. If a faculty is teaching 500 students in an intro psych course like I took when I was a freshman, how could that professor grade all 500? But in a 500 lecture room, what is the relationship between the faculty and the student? Actually, my intro psych teacher was fabulous. And we felt like she was talking to each one of us individually. But I wouldn't say that we actually had a relationship with her. But the reason I raised the comparison that somebody had made in the chat of the TA versus AI for feedback is the students sometimes complain, oh, but the teacher used AI to create some of the course materials. But the teacher doesn't create it out of whole cloth. They're basing what they teach in their class on the writings of other people, on the classes that they have taken in the past. So in some ways, AI is the next step, the iterative step in kinds of work that people have already been doing. Yeah, and Kim says, what about feedback banks? I think that that's a thing as well. In my first and last discussion of an 8-week course, the first week and the last week, I answer every single student. If I have 30 students in the class, the truth is, after the first 4 or 5, I don't have anything original to say to the students in the discussion feedback, and they're all seeing what I'm writing. So AI helps me. I say, what am I missing? What different can I add? This is what I'm talking about. This is what I've asked them. This is what I've posted so far. And it does become a partner. It would be just like my sitting down with Heather and saying to Heather, I'm teaching the sociology course. And then Heather gives me some ideas on things I could do. We would never say it's a problem that I'm working with Heather to do my stuff for class. So why is it a problem using AI for? Now, there is a transparency issue, and I think that's really important. Students should know how we're using AI, and we should know how students are using AI. So that I think is something that we need to keep in mind.
Yeah, and there's a couple random thoughts here. Some we've talked about how we're in these 30-person or 500-person classes, and traditionally we can't touch those students the way we have wanted to. There's actually a Karen Sever, she's in the chat, something we talked about covering this, and I'm going to mention it briefly and then give you the resources, is that AI can actually be a first round of feedback for the students in these large classes to teach them to self-assess. Harmonize has this built into our tools where we take the instructor's rubric and we tell the student, hey, before you turn in, if the instructor's okay with it, use this tool, see how you're doing. Karen took it a step farther and is really looking at how do we use AI as a first round of feedback, because students are hesitant to ask questions. They're hesitant to expose themselves and their initial round of work to anyone, fellow student, instructor, because we have this imposter syndrome in my post, especially first generation learners like in college grad and coming into college. It's like, how do I expose myself to this? But AI gives me feedback. I can then revise and then turn it in. So that can be a part of the Embrace the AI process as we go through. And I'll put those links in. I'll have to drop out of presentation mode because I wasn't smart enough to know I couldn't copy and paste from presentation mode. Or Karen, if you happen to be in and had the chat still and have your links, you can put them in as well. But this idea of like AI can be super helpful and way better than what we do in some of these intro level classes, simply because there's no way for us to touch every student the way we want to touch the student. As long as we teach critical thinking and teach them to question everything that they read and don't just do it, as Sheri's said, in whole cloth, which I didn't know that analogy before, but it can be a useful tool in that regard. And Karen actually has a Google Doc describing her process, and she has a Canvas Commons course that you can use to be able to embrace some of that. Our tools are a little more straightforward to where it's like, here's a rubric and we're just going to help the student coach with the rubric. There's a bunch of tools out there that are doing this, so you can think about it that way, or just put it in your instructions in this whole embrace the AI thing. Like, actually, I want you to do a draft. I want you to share that process, share that first draft, share what AI told you, share the second draft of what you did after AI told you that, so I can see the learning process happen, and I can see, are you doing the right thing with AI as you go through it all as well. So I talked tons there, maybe too much, but I just wanted to get to the nuts and bolts of, like, we all know this is a problem. We need to frame it as a social learning problem. We need to frame it as a good chance to be able to transition, but how do we transition? Because most institutions don't have tons of mandatory professional development. All the instructors are generally responsible for their own work. And how do we then give them the tools to be able to help them make this transition as well? So we have some time for questions, and Sheri and Heather, if you want to, I can go through the questions real quick. If you have anything else you wanted to add on those lines, I was going to scan some of the questions here and see. You guys can get your questions in the Q&A. You can get them in the chat as we're going through things as well. A question came in about videos as an AI resistant activity and how that differs from AI generated avatars and such. This gets to the heart of this multimodal thing. You heard me say AI resilient, AI resistant. You heard me say, multimodal can help. Nothing is AI proof. So this is why I say, just don't try to stop AI. Like, figure out how to work with it, figure out how to make it more difficult and more interesting. Frankly, podcasts are more interesting than written essays to some students. So that's what they want to do. That's a good universal design for learner principle. Let them express themselves how they want. Let them answer the question how they want. Let's get that variety going because you can't beat AI. There are billions and billions and billions of dollars on the side of AI and having it do jobs well. Unfortunately, there is not that much money on paying teachers salaries and writing assessments. I don't think. Sheri, I don't think you make billions of dollars to lead the teaching and learning effort, do you? Oh, you do? Okay, well, in that case, never mind, we're good. So just keep that in mind. You can't win this fight because capitalism, take it from it what you will, like, there's so much information, so much money on the side of AI doing the jobs well that, and as Heather was saying, like, maybe they think AGI, which is called what does AGI stand for? General intelligence?
Artificial general intelligence.
Artificial general intelligence, like, it's smart enough to just do a lot of things for you type of thing. It's coming. So how do we then make learning interesting enough that students want to invest time in it and a little more resilient to these assessments as well?
Yeah. He said, we are now confident we know how to build AGI as we have traditionally understood it. We believe that in 2025, we may see the first AI agents join the workforce and materially change the output of companies. Bam.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
we'll argue about whether that's true or not and such, but it
Yeah.
doesn't matter because it's true
It
enough
doesn't.
that it's a threat to what we're
is.
trying to do.
It is.
Okay, so here's the blog article. I'm going to put this out in the chat again. The blog article is helpful because it actually documents the strategies and describes why they work and such. For those Harmonize users that are in the room, we did add a little section of, like, if you're using Harmonize, here's the two pieces of the tool you can use. I saw some customers out in the chat, so it will give you a little boost in that regard as well. But the idea is, like, understand these so that when you roll into this link here for using the AI to revamp your assessment, you have some knowledge and some context to be able to understand what the AI is prompting about.
We've had technology that has changed society before. Most recently would be social media, but the telephones, television, transportation, the wheel, fire. The difference
Internet.
Internet. Yeah, I should have done that before social
Sheri went to
media.
fire, went straight to fire,
fire,
versus
fire.
internet.
Right. But the scale and the speed of this change is one that's much faster than all the others. But you just ask somebody's grandmother what their life was in 1940 and then ask what their life is like today and what things, technologies do they use even without thinking that are just part of their everyday lives. So we shouldn't be afraid of AI. But we should also understand that it's happening really quickly. And our faculty are on the front line for this.
Yeah. Someone asked a good question about privacy that I'm going to highlight here. That ChatGPT, that GPT that I just put out, each individual user has to opt out of sharing their information with ChatGPT. So if you use that as default, it is training the models. And this is one of the things on intellectual property that we don't have time to get into, but if you're using ChatGPT directly, you are training the models. You're training our AI overlords, as the detractors like to say. And so be careful with it and make sure that you maybe include that disclaimer. You can opt out of training models with your information. When we do the AI tools inside of Harmonize, we don't train the models with them, but you have to use Harmonize to do that. So that's not an option for everyone here. So if we're doing the rubric generation or the prompt generation for you inside of Harmonize, we already have a contract that says do not train on this intellectual property. That's not true if you go use these general models. And I think, Heather, I know ChatGPT, you can opt out of it. Do the others have an opt out as well of training the models with it? Do you know?
Yeah, they do. You just have
Okay.
to search for it. They don't make it very it's not splashing across the front page or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's usually in settings and kind of hidden, but there are boxes that you can check off. Well, Claude, I don't think never has done that. But Perplexity, you can choose not to do
yeah.
that.
Yeah, and and the ethical side, as Sheri pointed out in the chat, it's way too deep to get into, like the resource burn, the intellectual property, what it was trained on.
Right.
I prefer to not dive into that here because the practical reality is it's here. And
Right.
so ethical or not, it's being used. And so you can make that personal stance. And I encourage you to actually use AI to have some of
To
that
look it
debate
up.
with yourself.
Right.
Maybe I don't encourage you that because then you're burning resources. But I will say, like, it's a legit thing. But I'm just trying to live in the world we're in now, which is AI is a thing, and we have to embrace it and figure out how to deal with that world we live in.
But I do want to remind people to look at the QM standards, which
Yes.
really is about the basics of teaching and learning and relationship of student to faculty, student to student, student to material, and student to real world, and all the things that it takes to do that. And then to ask yourself, how do I get AI to help me keep with these standards?
Agreed. Yeah. We actually constantly use those standards when we're developing our software. Like I actually have a map of what do we building and how does it apply to QM, because that is a good safe place to be like, this has value because QM's already done the research for us. They know what has value. And here's a thing that supports 8 of the different subcategories of the QM standard. And so that's a great thing as a guidepost for us. And it can be the same way for you as well. So just, yeah, shout out to Jim and his group having that quality matters rubric of like, this is good online education. Come back to that because that quality 5 thing is all about that. The rubric 5 dimension is all about learner interactivity and being clear with what learners can do and trying to encourage that. And how do the student and the instructor interact and all those things. And that's the heart of what we're talking about here. AI has both broken that and shined a light on what was already a little broken in this. So it's not new. It's not a new breakage, but they help shine the light on that as well. Is there a Quality Matters rubric by chance, GPT rubric? Jim, do you guys have an AI for your Quality Matters rubrics to help assess courses and such?
We are spending some time figuring out how we can include AI in that, and but no, not right now. That does not exist.
Yeah, I
And
will
by the
put on.
time it exists, it may be outdated.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true. I will put on my sales hat for a second. If you do want to try Harmonize, we offer free pilots. So go to our website, harmonizelearning.com. We'll give it a free semester. You can get signed up. So that's my only sales pitch. I'll take off my sales hat now. Heather and Sheri and Jim, thank you so much for joining
Thanks.
this conversation.
Thank you.
Love it. Thanks for everyone that attended. Like having, I think it's 1,700 people in a webinar interested in this. Kudos to you for caring. Kudos to you for showing up for an hour to hear about things. I hope it was useful. I'm seeing a flood of thank yous and hearts, which is always good and warming. So Sheri and Heather and Jim, any parting thoughts?
Have fun
Well,
with it.
yeah, lean into it.
let me
It's
actually,
not going anywhere.
I'm totally going to dwell on the have fun part for a second. I had a stats instructor that was like, I actually am tired of reading about stats in general. Here are my hobbies. I used AI to generate assessments that made them do stats related to my hobbies and or their own hobbies. So I didn't have to read the same thing again. He's like, and it was way more fun. He's like,
Right.
and then another person from VCCS, she's like, I revamped my assessments based on current politics because it's so much easier to do with AI. I got tired of reading the same assessments. And so I redid them based on whatever's happening in the political election now because it's easier to do. It was more fun for
Right.
me. So come back to
Right.
that. More fun for you. It's going to make you actually have more fun with your students, more fun for your
Right.
students by allowing them to express themselves in different ways.
Exactly.
Like fun, 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 fun. So
Right. Have fun. Play.
bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
I
you.
will send out the recording and all of that. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.